Here we go. Thanks everyone for joining. So we're on the last day of the Flamingo Cycle PTG, and this is our hour to talk about project teams and how project maintenance is going on across all of the OpenStack projects. Um, I did send out email, I think, to all of the PTLs and project liaisons across the teams, but I will note, I mean, this is not the most favorable time zone to have PTG meetings for all of the project contributors. And neither is it even appropriate today, perhaps with at least three other rooms that are probably going to be discussing um, their own project stuff. This recording should be useful to other folks, but for those that are able to join us and provide feedback, this is extremely important. As we do this with every PTG, we've discovered there are some project issues that we don't tend to discuss in sync, or whenever we get to the TC discussions of it, it's quite late. Um, so I think we can kick this off with a few topic prompts. But if you do have your own topics, please feel free to add them under the open discussion on line 213, and we'll try to get to them within this hour. So first off, this is something I think we discussed the last time around, and I wanted to touch back on this, which is security. As we discussed during the last PTG, we are trying to extend the scope of the vulnerability management team, and apply the vulnerability management process to all OpenStack project teams. This does not mean all of the deliverables that the project teams are currently working on. I mean, sensibly is deliverables that are getting deployed in OpenStack clouds, and are being used by our end users and operators. And this is something that the project teams are supporting for that use case. So please take a look at that resolution on line 194. It should be what was the general consensus here. But I'm sure there are going to be a lot of questions around, how we can handle things in the VMT and things. And for that, I think the security SIG and the VMT itself is a great place to continue those discussions. But if you have some, wide-ranging topics, we should be able to add them and talk about them now. Um, in continuation of that, if you're a new PTL or even a continuing PTL, there's a good chance you haven't looked at this list looked at this page, the wiki page on line 196, in a while. Uh, we used to have quite a lot of cross-project activities. Some of them have pared down over the years, given that we've completed some tasks, and some of the cross-project coordination has reduced. But there are still some important bits over there, and the biggest thing today is security. And for the VMT to be able to perform its job properly, it needs to know that your project core security teams are properly staffed and that they are current. You will be surprised. There are many instances where people that are actively working on the projects are not in the core security teams, or maybe there is no core sec team on your bug tracker, or you have the PTLs that are there, that are not added, so they can't really control that group, and so on. So I think this is the cycle we can actually fix all of those, and keep a closer eye on things. Um, as a good starting point, at least vet your project teams, and figure out if you can nominate a security liaison, and fill out the liaison field, and replace anyone that's not currently active on your project. Um, and yeah, actually, let me pause over there. Is there anything that folks want to pipe in and discuss about this?
One thing that I think is worth noting about the VMT scope expansion is that, quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised to hear that the core set groups are So unpopulated because that's work that that fun guy's done a lot to try to fix up, and other folks on the VMT. But one of the problems that we run into sometimes is we'll have security bugs reported. We'll actually be able to engage someone, but then they still sit unfixed or unworked on for a while too. So I just want to reiterate what I've said in that governance proposal, that like it's more than just having a governance thing saying everyone's covered by VMT. We actually need the project teams to prioritize security work when those issues are reported and react to them, because the failure case here is that someone reports a security bug to us, we embargo it for 90 days and do nothing about it, which basically makes us, pretty terrible actors in the security ecosystem. So it's important that we do that follow up and make sure it's in place before we start feeding these things through the process where we're going to be, locking up security bugs in secret, uh, which is really unethical if we don't actually have the follow through for people to fix it.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah, and just to expand on that a little bit, it's not just about the uh, vulnerability reports that are embargoed, but also there are a number of lingering uh, bug reports that have suspected vulnerabilities in them, but are of a low enough threshold that we feel like it's safe for them to be open to public review, or that have sat unsolved in embargo until we reached our maximum embargo period and we switched them to public. So it would be great if, as Jay says, prioritizing security bugs or reports of suspected vulnerabilities. If like teams that do, a bug triage, bug czar kind of role or anything like that, could make a point of adding queries for public security bugs to their list of things that they track, and keep those as a high priority for the teams to resolve.
Makes sense. Anything else on that and about the cross-project liaisons? I haven't specifically linked to security here, but the focus today was about security. But please do look at this wiki page. There are a lot of other cross-project liaisons that are listed over there that are probably no longer active. But let's talk through security because that's the focus here.
I actually like the idea to have a TC, I would say mentoring the projects, because we had those kind of embargoed issues before, where we needed different projects to fix them. And the problem with that is that, in general, when you have vulnerability related to multiple projects, each of the projects try to fix by themselves, not basically at the same time. So I'm not saying that TC members should be responsible, and I hope they won't, for like the embargo and the timelines. But I like the idea that the TC members could like ping the project owners to tell them, have you already discussed as a team with like the other projects? Have you found any solution? Are you guys all okay? That way, that basically that's not the VMT that would be like doing that way. So that maybe that will help the VMT on that one.
Thanks, Julia.
I think there's two things that maybe one thing. I'm not entirely sure, so I'm just gonna kind of lay out my thought here. The TC mentoring and reminding projects that these are the table stakes that they signed up for when the project was created. They need to fix these sorts of classes of issues. And so the TC has to make this successful. TC does have to say, you need to fix your security issues. No buts about it. The alternative is you reject it as a project, and that's awful. But at the end of the day, no matter what happens, the TC is also held responsible by the community and by their employers, because a failure of a project to meet the moment in that 90-day window reflects upon the entire community poorly.
Yeah, that's a
I was honestly thinking that the responsibility should be for the whole team and not only for the TC, but fair enough. I mean, as a team, we have a responsibility to do this, and basically the TC should be basically helping the community. But that's just, if you prefer, like a naming concern. I understand your point. Indeed, the TC is here, and that's the TC's responsibility. But that's like basically the community responsibility to fix that. But yeah,
I agree with you. The reality is, though, that the TC also can't see the embargoed issues unless those TC members are also on the VMT. And even then, they're embargoed. They can't tell other TC members anything beyond something's coming.
Yeah, that's right. Jay?
Hey, Jay.
It's fine. It's fine. I'm gonna put my hand down.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. All right. No, I think the last point that you made, Julia, about the TC members being part of it was part of the resolution based on a suggestion itself. So right now, I think, I mean, the proposal, I said that there could be a couple of TC nominees in the VMT. They could work alongside the VMT. Of course, these TC members are free to actually apply and join the VMT and help them out on a day-to-day basis. But as an activity, we would keep having at least two members on the VMT so that we could coordinate these issues and react faster. Because in the past, I think the VMT had to come into TC meetings or to private ping TC members and alert them of non-compliance as per se, or just languishing bugs. So that could be avoided if you're working closer with the VMT. But that's just an idea. I'm happy to get some feedback over there. And a couple of raised hands. I think Jay, was your hand first?
Yeah.
Sorry.
I got the cat off my tongue there. Sorry about that. So sort of, I think this is interesting because we're kind of influencing this from a far point away, right? Like the TC influences projects to prioritize things. The project's developers have to influence their bosses to give them time to work on it oftentimes. So it's like we are sort of pushing through 2 or 3 layers of bureaucracy to actually get to the point where someone has time to work on this. And so it makes me kind of ask the question of if the TC or the foundation has any knobs that they can turn at like a business priority level with maybe like foundation member companies, or at a TC level, like motivating leaders of those companies to understand, prioritize security, and make it where we don't have developers who are having to fight between should I deliver this thing or should I do security, because I feel like that, at least from the results in the VMT, it looks like those type of decisions are happening sometimes.
Julia?
So there aren't really that many knobs. And this is definitely one of those, the projects control their own destinies. I will say, anytime I've communicated with anyone that's in management, all the magic word is, I have a CVE. And a lot of times when those people are pushing back on actually doing the needful, it might be that they're just failing to communicate enough context. That being said, yes, we probably do need to explore some additional avenues, but it's not like we can populate there is a CVE as context. We just need to have the community drive towards that as a greater consensus building thing, that these are things that take the number one priority, and they are awful and they are no fun, but we need to do them and set that as our culture, because then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy that these things then get worked.
Thanks. Jeremy?
Yeah. From a available knobs perspective, that's actually one of the reasons I've more recently started getting heavily involved in regulatory compliance. A lot of the governmental regulations that are starting to come to bear on open source software provide us with some ways to incentivize downstream consumers of the software to help us out with security issues, because that's security vulnerabilities are a very big part of most of these various regulations now. So the companies who are selling products based on our software are going to be obligated to meet these regulations, and the most cost effective way that they can do that in a lot of cases, at least what we would like to convince them is to work upstream, collaborating on making that possible, so that they don't all have to do the exact same thing in parallel separately within their own companies.
That segues greatly into specifically what I raised my hand to say, which is maybe a concrete idea that today we sort of hold the trust level at OpenStack, right? Like if a VMT gets a bug, we hold it secret to very few members of the project, things like that. I wonder if we should consider modifying that policy to allow like security organizations at these companies to get a heads up on embargoed items as well, just to help with priority. Like, you know, if the VMT could email like security teams at the top 5 contributing OpenStack companies and say, you know, there is a bug in Cinder that has, you know, these potential exploit factors. We can't give you the details of it, but please encourage your teams to prioritize fix this bug. Just something there to close the loop, so that maybe the OpenStack side, the upstream side, is applying pressure to the security teams to help prioritize in addition to the product teams themselves. Because that's, I feel like there's got to be a place there where we can get better embedded into the companies to help them encourage and prioritize this stuff.
Julia?
I think that's an excellent idea. I also think it's going to create some friction amongst perceptions. But I know, at least in my employer, that team has basically said, if there's a security issue, loop us in. We will go be the 5,000-pound gorilla with your manager, or your manager's manager, or your manager's manager's managers, to ensure that you get the time to work on this and get it taken care of properly. So I think ultimately, if people are not prioritizing, they're either second guessing or failing to understand, or they just don't want to deal with it, which is a huge other problem. And ultimately, that's why these security organizations exist inside of these vendors as well, to help motivate, drive, and ensure that these teams are held accountable, that they are working these items. So it's sort of there's multiple reasons for those teams to exist, and this is one of them, and we should realistically leverage it.
Awesome. Anything from the project teams over here, PTLs, security liaisons, etc. How does this proposal sound to you? How are you doing on your security issues? do you need any help, thinking through some things?
I would just say something. Maybe the projects PTL are not part of their own project CoreSec team. So that means that at least for me, I'm not talking about other PTS, but at least for me, I wasn't really part of the CoreSec team in Nova. Maybe from the first year. That's only after the first year that I became part of the CoreSec team. There are multiple reasons, and I don't want to debate that. But voila. So what I'm saying is that, security vulnerabilities efforts, vulnerability management is not really. That's a very, very, very special sub team sometimes.
Yeah, I kind of differ, but Jeremy, you had your hand up first. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to answer that by saying that's the reason why we have the option of PTLs delegating that function to a liaison. So in our current escalation process, which, as I mentioned in that resolution, I'll do a better job of explicitly documenting. But basically, if we're not getting a response from the members of the CoreSec team, then we either reach out to the security liaison for the team if there is one documented, or we reach out to the PTL as the de facto security liaison if there's not a specific security liaison documented. So we already definitely have a fallback solution for PTLs not feeling comfortable being involved in the vulnerability management part of leading their project.
Anyway, I think that's a good opportunity. That I definitely like the proposal because that's also a good opportunity for projects to take time to look at their own liaisons and their CoreSec team. I'm saying that because yeah. Anyway, maybe Fingy knows about why I'm saying that, but yeah, that's probably the good time for some projects to take a short time of thinking exactly about their own CoreSec team.
Yeah, now's a good time as ever. I think a couple of things there. Not just the CoreSec team. You will see some of the project trackers are misconfigured too. And this is not great, right? Because we don't control Launchpad. It's not an open infra thing. So it is up to the people that are managing these trackers to actually do the right thing. So if you have misconfigured your private security bugs to be open to specific individuals or maybe other groups in the past, take a look. These sharing settings are kind of hidden in your project management dashboards or whatever. And if you need any help, I recently discovered that the Manila one was badly disconfigured in such a way that it was sending security reports to a particular company email list, which kind of sucks for an open source project. But we kind of fixed that after many years. Where you probably want to avoid such loopholes. So if you're auditing your CoreSec teams, please also audit the visibility settings on Launchpad for your project teams. Awesome. Anything else on this topic? We've covered this quite a lot. I think one last call out was from the security sig on line 215. This came up in the security SIG discussion, which is, are all of the deliverables that you are looking at meeting the requirements that the security SIG has put forward for the project? There are some testing requirements out there. They're actually quite detailed. So please take a look. Maybe sometimes you probably omitted setting up some of these test jobs against some of the repositories that you expected to be testing. But as a project team, you can actually audit that yourselves and confirm that those requirements are met by all the deliverables. Last call before we move on to the next topic. Anything else about this?
Do we want to discuss Jay's confusion?
I just
Because
put a
I
comment in
can.
there. Someone
Yeah,
was
I mean, I can at least provide insights on some projects.
Well, it said PTL is not by design a core reviewer. Granting security control to the PTL by default is not great. But in our system, the PTL is the person who decides who core reviewers are. So that seems like a distinction without a difference, right? If you're the PTL, if you're elected or appointed PTL, you're the person who can get those settings adjusted to get yourself put into core. Is that a wrong impression?
Yeah, I mean, when you say in our system, you mean in OpenStack?
I mean, yes, in OpenStack, the way our governance works, if someone's a PTL, then by extension, they have at a minimum the ability to gain core reviewer, even if they don't have it. So I think the whole discussion about whether or not PTL should have access to security stuff is kind of moot as long as that exists there. I mean, I guess there's a catch in that it's code reviewed, but we traditionally don't have a history of the TC stepping in and forcing teams to reject specific core reviewers, especially not their PTL.
Yeah, Julia.
So related, there was a case where someone who was a non-core actually ran and for the PTL position. It caused a huge amount of drama, I guess was the word to use to describe it. I think that was in 2016 or 2017. In any event, I think we have a structured model, and so I don't think it's really being left up to any sole person to do that. It's just they are the person who has the ability to go, oh, I need to facilitate this for my team. And that's a role of communication, not necessarily direct ownership of all security things.
Jeremy?
Yeah, just to clarify, I mean, we do and have had PTLs who are not taking on core reviewer responsibilities in projects. Glance had one for a number of years. Nova currently has a PTL who's not a core reviewer. But that said, and to Jay's point, the TC has delegated responsibility for deciding how the project manages its change approvals to the elected or appointed PTL for that team. So the PTL may not be a core reviewer actively. They may not have direct logistical access to perform core review activities, but it is still their responsibility ultimately to decide who is going to be a core reviewer, even if they delegate that responsibility to the other core reviewers. They're delegating the responsibilities to decide who is a core reviewer, regardless of whether or not they plan to act as a core reviewer themselves.
Jay, go ahead.
That was a misclick. I was trying to thumbs up.
I see. Okay.
Okay, thanks. I definitely like Jeremy's explanation about the delegation of responsibility.
All right. Let's move on to the next topic, which was how's your team doing on community goals? Do you need any help? Uh, and I think we've had goal champions from each of these goals try to set up status updates and things over the time, but some of these have fallen off the radar. Many a times we probably prematurely think that a goal is somewhat done because a majority of projects have finished something. But there's probably some lingering things in some project teams and so on. This is heavily something that project teams should care about themselves, release to release. The goal champion is just usually one person or two people, and it's just an enormous amount of work to go into each project repository and to vet whether something is done or not. I think the biggest thing that they can set up is team meetings and set up even the structure around it, like a sig or a pop-up team or something, and have discussions with project contributors. um, but I think, I mean, if you folks have better ideas there, or things that are going wrong, in case of goals that are staying on without being completed, feel free. This is your opportunity to speak up. Okay, don't all of you go at once.
Yeah. Can we have links to all these? I assume there are documents regarding all these goals, but honestly, for instance, I'm not sure about root trap migration. I don't think we've even discussed it within the Gland Squad. So if we could have a link to a reference document for each of these community goals, that would be great.
Yeah. So we did that as a goals retrospective, I think on line 117, and we did that
Oh,
on Monday. So you can see some more links out there and some more discussion based on the current status and so on.
oh, thank you.
It's okay not to have any thoughts right now. It is a reminder that these goals are currently active, and some of them, I think, we're just like kicking it back. So yeah, Julia, go ahead.
So looking at it, there are many goals. Some projects are completed and others. I know some projects are more active than others, and that's perfectly okay. Is there a relative priority order to these items specifically so that projects can better plan and communicate around what they need to do and what they need to focus on? Like, for example, if I were to look at that list, I would say event was probably number one because we've got an 18-month clock as I view it, or even really it's probably shorter than that, but we have a clock that we're up against.
Yeah, you're right, and that might also be because of recency bias, in the sense that recently started working across the community on this, and so it feels very urgent, and a lot of work seems to be visible right now. Whereas some of the other stuff, I think, has had the same priority at some different point. Like, for example, the secure RBAC stuff was huge operator burden that wanted to be eased a few cycles ago, and then things slowed down because I think we started hearing operator feedback, and we wanted to change directions multiple times, um, by design. But you're right. I think I don't think we've talked about prioritization between them, but maybe Kancham, you fill in. Go ahead, Kancham. I can't hear you. I don't know if it's just me.
I hear
How about
nothing.
now? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. I tried many audio settings and this time works. So with the current like the structure we have for goal, there is no priority thing we as a TC set. So what we do, like we have detached all the goals from the release specific. So what TC does is there are the list of active goals, and let project start working on them based on the priority and based on the bandwidth they have. But setting the priority from TC side is not a bad idea, I think, considering like say event let removal, and where we know the more coordinated effort, and for example say the migrating the CI/CD testing. So I like the idea, like if TC can somewhere not prioritize every goal, but at least in a particular cycle we can say, okay, this is our highest priority goal, and every project should more focus on that, and rest other is a project can decide what priority are. So at least like, and it can be case by case, like if there is say event let goal is done, and there are few other goals there where we had a good progress also but not completed, so we don't need to set the priority for them. But if something comes up important, then at least TC can communicate that this is the priority. Don't look at just all the 5 6 active goals, look at this one which we are more focusing in this cycle.
Slavik.
I think Dimitri was, or no, okay. I like this idea basically, but one thing which I wanted to add is that TC should probably review this list of goals every cycle and adjust priorities, because sometimes, for example, event-lit migration, now it can be like normal priority, but in I don't know, 3 cycles, we may see that it will be the highest priority, and every project should complete it, right? So this priority list should be at least adjusted at the beginning of every cycle by the TC, I guess.
Julia?
I would actually also put deadlines in place. The reason being, when I was on the TC, we really the whole goals idea was, hey, let's tell projects this is the one or two most important things from the focus on. And now that list, I think my last glance, either was 5 or 6. And I know every project's in varying states, but at the same time, we do need to provide a context of when there's a drop dead date. Like Eventlet has a drop dead date. Projects will be broken. And what do we do at that point? We can't just let teams defer that item without setting the necessary context. So I think this is key that we need to communicate. We need to reprioritize every year and kind of just go through the motions. And it shouldn't take that long. Yeah.
Agreed. Kancham? Mic issues again.
Yeah. Okay. I'll not try the new mic. So the deadline, like we had few of the cases like the migrating CI/CD. We obviously have the deadline of completing that within one cycle, and what we do, how we communicate that deadline is via the goal champion, where wherever like goal champions are tracking the goal, they can communicate it clearly, like these are the phases and this is the deadline we are thought of completing it. Python 2.7 drop was another example, like where we cannot extend the work. Like for example, secure RBAC, yes, around say 16 project has completed, but there is no something breaking other projects, so that's why they are slow sometime, which is okay. But say for example, event let removal, if there is no support available after say 2-3 cycle or something, then that deadline obviously we can communicate via gold champion. And in goal documentation also, like there is no restriction of we, even though we have detached the goal from cycle deadlines, but always there is a plan. Goal champion or whoever proposing the goal, they can define their milestones. For example, for RBAC we have defined the milestone and the final deadlines, so that also we can do that. But the key thing is we have to communicate those to projects very clearly, because not many projects uh, take aware of the goals, and not many projects give more priority to the goals due to bandwidth or any other reason. But somewhere, like it's a more communication we can do with the project about deadlines. Yeah, Julia.
Julia?
So I agree, and I think I realize everyone has different velocities, everyone has different capacities. And one of the things that shocked me kind of looking at the RBAC goal is, wow, we still have teams that have an implemented manager. And I'm just sitting here thinking, I did that in like a couple hours. What? Huh? And I know every situation's different, but we need to start really, unfortunately, trying to drive home that we need to, in order for our goal to be successful amongst the community, we need to drive it forward. And there at some point is you need to do this, or you need to write up why you're not doing it. And that needs to be documented someplace or detailed. And I hate to feel like that's a giant hammer, but it's like the communication is a two-way street. What's your context? Why can't you do this? Does that signal a problem in the design? Does it signal that this doesn't apply? Get on the same page, I guess, is what I'm trying to drive towards.
Jay?
Yeah, like I feel like I'm going to go the bad cop direction as well, right? Like it's very, very hard to modify behavior unless there's consequences for behaviors that aren't ideal. And I think we're seeing that be part of the reason why these goals aren't being prioritized, because there's absolutely no harm to a project. Or when I think about project, again, I translate that in my head to like whatever, their organizational priorities are they're reflecting. We aren't pushing that pain back onto users of that project. We aren't pushing that pain back onto people who work on that project. We instead are absorbing the pain as an overall distribution of cloud software through the fact that our stuff is inconsistent, through the fact we have to explain to some users that, oh, you kind of have two RBAC models going on at the same time. This sort of stuff is stuff that we're all paying because we haven't figured out how to introduce some type of consequences to people who aren't following through and completing these goals. This is very much like a cousin to the problem of the security bug issue of, unless there is a negative consequence that comes from not doing something that is apparent, that is obvious, that impacts the people who make the bad decision that causes it to happen, then we can't expect things to change.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think with each of these goals, again, the negative consequence would change yeah, depending on, oh, this is a nice thing to have across the community. Just happens to be a goal. So we can offer some consistent experience around something. Versus, oh no, this one is like, the software is going to be bricked if you didn't do this. So again, probably goes back into the priority to define what the negative consequence should be. I think the TC can think about this, and I feel like there are a couple of good points here about how to call this out and how to prioritize things and how to communicate it. I think let's soak that in for maybe a little bit, and then discuss it at a upcoming weekly meeting. How does that sound? We have a couple of other topics for this hour. And before we end, I did want to take a team picture before folks go off into other rooms and such. The next topic is something around just informational. That if you are a new PTL, or if you are a maintainer on a project that you really wanted to get some data on how your project team is doing and so on. There has been these dashboards that that have been available to the community. Some of those, I think, project teams have started seeing as part of a retrospective of how the cycle went. For instance, how long have changes been open? How long have things just languished without a first review, and so on. So please feel free to take a look at those dashboards and discuss it within your project teams, because I think one of the wider things that we want to do is keep the contributor engagement across the community, but many times within specific projects this could be degrading differently um, from across the community. So take a micro view as well through these dashboards. I'll pause here. Doug, go for it.
No, so we're mentioning developer experience, and it almost a little bit goes back to the community goals. To me, in my mind, a little bit, um, if this makes sense. But I look at like root wrap migration and secure RBAC, and um, both of those, as a developer, it is really hard to do the right thing or to even do that migration. I mean, heck, we'll just say eventlet is also, as a developer, stupidly hard. Like I've wanted to do some parts on eventlet, right? And we don't have packages and libraries that would help make that easier in requirements on eventlet. And that took a while to land. Like secure RBAC, for example, Julia mentioned people haven't implemented manager, right? Manager is really poorly documented. And for a long time, the documentation that said this is just an internal role for Keystone, not for other projects to use. And that you can still find that wording in some places. As far as the like secure RBAC, you know how many current OpenStack projects and how many things describe how to create service accounts incorrectly. I can probably find more docs today on how to do it wrong than there are docs on how to do it right. So um, maybe kind of developer experience from an ease of doing this is kind of tied into those community goals a little bit. I don't have an answer. I'm just saying that I feel like they're a little bit interrelated. Um,
Yeah, thanks, Julia.
Maybe the problem is that we have made the goals too big in general. Maybe the goal for RBAC secure RBAC should have been 3 distinct goals. One of them being manager with a substep of go revise your documentation. I mean, it's easy to also say this looking back, but I think ultimately we bucket really big things together, and that's probably not the best idea.
Yeah, that makes sense, and it's probably something that goal champions can take a look at again and see if we can split things up in those contexts. Some of them are easier, done together as one thing, but something like secure our back, for instance, is big. We have just 10 more minutes. Is there anything else that you folks wanted to talk about for with the project leads in the room? So I will skip the UI projects thing, maybe for just a little bit down, and move on to discussion. So feel free to add any new discussion topics. As TC members, has anything been burning in your minds to ask the project team leads that you haven't already? Or vice versa? All right. I guess if there are no further topics, I'm going to stop recording for a sec so we can take a team picture with everyone, and then we can take a small break before we come back to the next topic, the next set of topics that we have. How about that? Let me quit recording.